Well, 2024, it's been an excellent year. He went back-to-back at the Freedom Cup at Cottage Grove. He won the Wild West Speedweek in June for the Sport Mods and picked up the inaugural $15,000 to win Western SportMods Nationals at Yreka Speedway in California. Who are we talking to? He's out of Brookings, Oregon. We're talking about Matt Sanders, about his introduction to racing and his strides that he has made throughout the years in his driving career. That's coming up next. But before we get to the interview, make sure wherever you're listening or watching from, you hit the like button and subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes. Well, this is a guy that we've been trying to get on for a while, and it's great to have him. Matt Sanders out of Brookings, Oregon, piloting Friesen Performance IMCA Northern Sport Mod number 2M. Matt, great to have you. Man, what a season 2024 has been, and what a career you've had in the short time span that we've known each other. It just seems like you guys just keep finding speed. It doesn't matter where you're racing, and success just seems to follow you there.
Yeah, I mean, can't complain too much about the success I've had in a short amount of time. The speed, consistency mainly helps with, started out really my first car was basically a jet, and I stayed in that for multiple years and just kind of learning, setup wise, things that I didn't know when we first started, and got, like I said, did pretty good in the jet, and then now we're venturing on to something new. So, and out of the box this year, that was the beginning of this year, getting into the twisted, been pretty good also. So.
Just tell me the beginning. I'm trying to think. First time I saw you was, about 5 years ago, I think. It was you race, and for listeners that are unfamiliar, your brothers race, Stephen and Isaac, and you guys just started showing up and racing a lot, and like I said earlier, just consistently got faster as more and more time you guys got experience and seat time.
Yeah, kind of a funny story with my brothers. So my dad wanted to get me into racing, and so one day we finally, decided he was going to buy a car, and so we went to our local track, and we were watching a big race. It was, actually, I wasn't even there, but he went there to surprise me, basically. Mm-hmm. And he was planning on getting a dwarf car because he just thought that was, he thought that would be a cool class to get into. And so he went to a dwarf car nationals race at Southern Oregon Speedway, and was sitting there in the stands watching and was talking to a local guy, Donnie Bottoms, and they were talking about racing or whatever, and he was telling them about how he was here to basically get into buying a car. And basically Donnie talked him into getting a sport mod instead of a dwarf car. And so Donnie actually was the one who found our first car ever for us, because we didn't know anything. So my dad basically told me, he's like, "Hey, I'm serious. If you find me a good car, let me know." And then, so anyways, he got the first car for me. And then the funny part about it is I raced the first night, and then after that first night, my brother was there helping out just because my dad wanted him to tag along just to come to the first race. And right after that very first night, I guess he told my dad, he was like, "Well, I want to do that too." So there we were one race in. We didn't even have we didn't have any tools of our own at all. We borrowed a trailer just to get to the racetrack that weekend. And so the next weekend, we actually basically went back to Donnie again, was like, "Hey, if you can find another car, as soon as possible, I'll buy another car." And so anyway, somehow, some way, he found another car, and we ended up having two cars at that point before the next weekend. And we had to tow one car on an open trailer to the track, drop it off. He drove up to Redding, which was another 3 hours past the first track we were going to. Mm-hmm. Picked up the new car that he just bought, brought it back, dropped it off at the track. And so then we had two cars at the track with one trailer and zero tools. So that was how we literally started our racing career the first 2 weekends. And then after that, obviously, we realized we were getting into it, and so we ended up getting our first, what you would call a stacker trailer, but it was actually a home built stacker trailer, and then we just upgraded from there.
Well, I was going to say, there's no real direct route to Brookings from where Southern Oregon Speedway is, White City, Medford. I mean, you guys either have to go up to Grants Pass and go down into California and go up. What is it? Not 197. What is that route? 199?
Yeah, 199.
Yeah.
From Brookings, we go south for about 10, 15 miles, and then we cut over on a cross 197 highway, which hooks to 199, and then that goes from the coast over to Grants Pass, like you said, to I-5.
Yeah,
so.
And it's a lot of drive, and you're going through the coastal range. I mean, it's not like a flat biscuit drive. It's you're going, I'm sure, some curvy sections.
Oh yeah, very, very tight roads in a lot of spots, and definitely very windy. So, yeah. And of course, our closest track is Southern Oregon Speedway, which is 2.5-ish hours from us. So, yeah, pretty much every weekend we got to drive, a couple hours at the least to get somewhere. So,
well, prior to that night, your dad going to Medford and watching races, was there any interest from you of watching racing or talking about racing? And I guess kind of what got him sort of excited to go over there to go and watch?
Yeah. So growing up, my grandpa actually used to race back in the day, and so he's the only one in our family that really raced. But that wasn't really what sparked it. But my grandpa used to race, and then growing up as a kid, my dad would take us to the races at Southern Oregon Speedway mainly. We went to Cottage Grove a few times just to watch. Mm-hmm. So as a family and stuff, we'd go watch races. And then just we were always into just racing in general, the sport of racing, not obviously doing it, but just into watching it. And it was an interest to us. Other than that, other than my grandpa racing and just watching races every once in a while, basically just I basically only ever drove was what you'd call indoor rental cart. Okay. Which wasn't organized, but that was the only thing I ever drove that was even racing, cart related at all before we got into the sport mod. So basically I started out from nothing.
Yeah. Well, and the decision to go from the dwarf cars to sport mods, what led to that? Was it just going out and just trying something new, or a chance to go to a couple different tracks, or what was the enticement there? Just wanting to go faster?
Well, I actually never even started in the dwarf car. When my dad first originally went to go buy a car, that's just what he was going to get. Okay. And then Donnie at the track talked him into getting a sport mod instead. So we actually never even got into the dwarf car thing.
That makes sense, because I was going to say Donnie Bottoms was a modified racer, sport mod racer. Okay.
Yeah, at the time his son was racing sport mod.
Okay.
So.
DJ, right?
Yeah, DJ. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now it's all coming together here. So.
Yeah.
Okay. And then obviously running Medford, and then it just branched out to obviously, talking about the first time I ran into you guys was Cottage Grove, and then you guys were coming in, it seemed like right when sport mods were really starting to go. I mean, because at one point in time there was only a handful of sport mod drivers for it seemed like for a while, and then all of a sudden there was an explosion of Cottage Grove was getting 18 weekly kind of deal, and Medford, same deal. Medford, I think it kind of started there and trickled up to Cottage Grove.
Yeah. When we started, let's see, my first year was 2017, and I don't know when the sport mod class actually originated, but it was like you said, it was a few years before that for sure.
Yeah, 13, 14, somewhere around there.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there wasn't many cars obviously those years, but when we started in 2017, there was actually a decent amount in the Medford, Yreka area. And then the first full year for me was actually 2018, and that's when we started venturing from Southern Oregon Speedway. We went up to Cottage Grove a few times, and yeah. So when we started, the car count was already on the rise. It wasn't as low as just a few cars here and there. So we basically came into it as the rise of car counts were going up. So.
And since then, you've seen all the changes, and I feel like for the most part they've been good. Where Sport Mods are part of the Wild West Speedweek, which was a good thing for you guys to have a full week of racing. And there's been some big money shows that have gotten some folks some pretty good notoriety.
Yeah, the first few years, like you said, we weren't the main, we were kind of on the back burner of like the shows. We were the support class basically. But now, like you said, in the last few years, for sure, the sport mods have kind of, especially on the West Coast. I know in the Midwest, modifieds are still really big. Probably big, more cars over there than there are sport mods. But over here on the West Coast, it seems like they've kind of, the car counts of sport mods over mods has kind of overgrown them. So, there's just a lot of cars out here, and then coming along with that means that we've been getting a lot of bigger races and just more bigger paying races in general around here in our area. So that's been kind of cool.
And it seemed like you really turned a corner, I want to think right around 2020 or so, of venturing outside the box, which is the West Coast, traveling a little bit, I believe you went to the Midwest, and then of course COVID, there wasn't a lot of options to race on the West Coast due to the high restrictions, so you had to kind of go elsewhere. COVID year was definitely a year that got us traveling, where we started really traveling like long distances, because we had no racing over here for a while, and so we were kind of like, what are we going to do? And basically my dad was like, well, if we can find at least a handful of races, it doesn't matter where it's at. He's like, we can find at least a handful of races within a week or two span. He said, we'll just go, test it out and see what happens. And so COVID year, the very first race that came up that we seen was in Colorado, Cortez, Colorado. And that, obviously it was due to COVID and nobody else racing, but that ended up being a very big race. Actually, there was like, I want to say a couple hundred cars. Yes. And it was only like 3 classes or maybe 4 classes. Yeah,
it was crazy. Pretty much everybody wanted to race, so they all showed up. But, we went to Colorado for like 3 days that was. And then, there was another 3-day show at the same place the next weekend. But so we were either going to stay there or we were going to head off to Iowa, because Iowa was the only other place that was opening racetracks at the time. So, we just decided to take off and go to Iowa since we had the chance, and we had never been there before. So we just kind of took off and went and raced about 4 or 5 different tracks over in Iowa, and that was kind of our big first venture, out of state, really, traveling and going different places. So that was kind of fun.
And it seems like ever since then, I'm bumping into you guys in Arizona in the wintertime. You guys went and ran Canyon quite a bit, and IMCA TV Winter Nationals when you guys can as well.
Yeah. We went to, that was Canyon. Yeah, back when Canyon was open, we went to that one. Went to Arizona Speedway, ET, before it closed down, which was freaking awesome. I really wish that wouldn't have closed down, because honestly, I think that was my favorite track I ever raced at. Mm-hmm. So it sucks to see that one gone, but I'd definitely like to go back there. We went down to Arizona 2 or 3 times now. The last 2 years for Winter Nationals, we were down there. So
I don't know if your dad told you this story, but Jerry Van Sickle had me do some investigative reporting. He's like, find out who the cars that says it's 2M. It was this year's Winter Nationals. and it was like speed tape where it looked like a 1, like a, I don't know. And he was like, that is not, you tell him. I'm like, well, let me tell you this. Like, I know who the guy is. So I found your dad, and your dad was actually on the air. Like, Jerry says he's going to donate his time to do a speed tape thing because it's confusing him. And your dad's just like, well, too bad. We're leaving after tonight.
Yeah, we weren't, the story behind that is, this year, the last year that we were there, we weren't even actually planning on going to actually race that. We just happened to be down there at the same time because we were actually buying a car down there. So we went down there and bought a race-ready car, and then since we were there and it was at the same time that Winter Nationals was going on, we just, decided to run down to the track, and we just raced a couple nights there, but we weren't planning on staying for the whole 2 weeks. So, yeah, we only stayed a couple nights and then took off.
Are you looking to find that adrenaline rush, but you can't because you're not at the racetrack? Well, check out the IMCA TV Replay subscription library to have access to thousands of hours of racing for just $24.99 a month. Relive all the moments of the Speedway Motors IMCA Super Nationals fueled by Casey's at Boone Speedway, the Harris Clash at Deer Creek Speedway in Spring Valley, Minnesota, the IMCA TV Winter Nationals at Cocopah Speedway in Somerton, Arizona, Florida's Clash on the Coast, and dozens of Speedway Motors IMCA weekly racing program racetracks from across the nation, as well as the IMCA TV Dirtcast podcast. Plus, 25% of that $24.99 monthly fee goes towards the Driver's Point Fund and is a great way to help out your local racers. In 2023, over $97,000 was paid out to IMCA drivers directly at over 50 racetracks across the country. Please note that live broadcasts are not part of the replay subscription. That's IMCA TV. IMCA TV, where America comes to watch racing. You drive the car number 2M. Is there any special meaning behind selecting that number and letter combination?
No, special meaning, no. I don't even really have a, definitive reason why. Two's just kind of always been my favorite number. And then the M is just to separate my number from any other, repeat 2 numbers anytime you go to a track. Obviously, my name being Matt, that's just the letter I chose to put behind it. So, but as far as the number itself, no, there's not really any special meaning or anything behind it.
And no fear of using the color green on your car, because it seems like between you and your brothers at some point you've all had green. So you probably the most. So
yeah. So basically how that worked is when we first started racing, my favorite color is green. So that's what I wanted on my car. And when we first started, basically I got to choose that because I was the original one that started racing. And then my brothers were basically forced by my dad at the time to have that color because he was thinking that, this is going to be like a team sport type of thing. So he wanted us to all match. And then as years have went on now, obviously we've went away from that. So now my brothers have their own, colors that they want, and I got my own color. And so now all of our cars look a little different, which is nice because I know we used to go to the track and all of our cars would look exactly the same with just a different number, and people would get confused on who's who sometimes. So
hey, it wasn't Bloom Family Racing level of confusion, and that's not a derogatory statement, by the way. That's like at a whole different level.
Yeah, they got the full wraps, and they're all exactly the same, and it's even harder to see their numbers on their cars too. So that definitely is a little more confusing. So
sure. Well, you mentioned the team aspect, and I'm glad you brought that up, because what's so cool with walking around the pits, especially on multi-day shows, and I'm either having a quick chat with you guys or your dad, is one of you will have let's just use an example, right? You have a good night, you got locked in, the West Coast, the Western SportMods Nationals, but then instead of you just hanging out on the couch where, how hot it was like 110 degrees with heavy smoke for 3 days. Easiest thing for you is just to get your beauty rest and just be in a mental state, but every weekend, no matter high, low, or middle, you guys are working on each other's stuff, making sure that you guys as a team are running well, and that's really cool to see.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, we are a team, so we're all pitting together the same trailer, same tools, and so obviously, I mean, yeah, we all love each other as a family and as a race team. So anytime that something happens, we're all going to be working on it together. Especially since a lot of times you don't have a lot of time to get stuff fixed when something happens. So yeah, just it is kind of a team sport. So anytime the team needs to get together to make something happen, we will.
So far, an amazing year. Obviously, we've talked about, an amazing career, winning championship at Cottage Grove in 22, the year before Southern Oregon Speedway, a state champ in 22. And this year, going back-to-back at the Freedom Cup at Cottage Grove, no doubt a big accomplishment. Winning Speedweek for the SportMods, a big accomplishment. But then the Western SportMods Nationals, inaugural event, $15,000 a win. Everybody kind of just, their jaws dropped and their minds exploded when that race was announced. But, accomplishing all those things in 2024 is just got to be sensational.
Yeah, it's actually pretty crazy. I mean, just the Yreka Western SportMods Nationals race alone is, that's pretty wild, especially since that's really the first big. I've won before that, I won my biggest race ever was I think 1,000 to win race, and I won. I think that was at Yreka actually. It was a memorial race that I won 2 years in a row, and that was earlier in my career. But just the fact that I've ran up front, second, third multiple times in a lot of these big races over here on the West Coast, and never once got it done really. So, and then to all of a sudden, have a 15,000 to win race that drew, cars from all over the country, and to be able to, put myself on the victory lane there was pretty crazy. So I'm still kind of speechless about that one.
Well, and the way you won it too, it was remarkable. You had Tyler Bannister, Joe Dosickle just racing each other hard, and then they get together and you kind of got a piece of them too. And I'm sure there was a moment of concern of man, am I okay? And then you were okay. You were able to keep calm and keep settled down, and then you just dominated from there on out once you got the lead.
Yeah, that was definitely close to disaster.
Sure.
I remember, we all, I was behind Joe, and we were running the high side of 1 and 2, and Tyler slid Joe, and they got hooked together, and then coming off of 2 down the backstretch, I saw them hooked together, so I let out of the gas, and I didn't know if they were going to roll down the track or stay on the top of the track. I didn't know where they were going, so
sure.
That's why I was just waiting to see where they looked like they were rolling to, and they started kind of going down the track, and so I just last minute cranked the left because I didn't have enough room to really go around the top side of them. I mean, it was really, really close. I don't think I actually ever made contact with them, even though it might have looked like it on the video, but yeah, it was really, 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 really close.
It was close to being a full-on Monster Jam rally. So.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been good, that's for sure.
No. And one of the most things that stand out was obviously you're pumped up. Your dad's going crazy. Your brothers are going crazy. But your son, just the fact that he didn't have a voice left just stood out with me. I don't even know really what he was saying because it was so loud, just everybody losing their mind. And then he didn't have any juice left in his voice box. So.
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I don't know what he was doing. He was probably sitting there screaming that, the whole time I was in the lead that whole race. So I can imagine. He gets very, very into the racing, especially when we're out on the track. So he's all in on it. So, yeah, he's definitely my biggest supporter. He's very like I said, he's 100% into it. So I mean, when I do bad, he's mad too. So
Sure.
he's mad and then he's happy when I do good. So it's complete full end of the spectrum for his emotions. So
yeah, no, that's super cool. Brookings, Oregon, where you live, right on the Southwest Oregon coast, right on the border. Like California is, what, like a mile
3
away?
miles.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's just it's more bridge than anything separating you guys. But it's a beautiful and scenic area for people that have never been to that part of the Southern Oregon coast.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's the classic Oregon, nature environment out here. All the people that live in the Midwest, like for instance, a couple years ago when Colby, Fett, and Joe came over to our trials race in Medford. I remember Colby was talking about, the scenery and everything when he was on his way here. So, or when he got here, I should say. So it's definitely a completely different environment and just place to live compared to anywhere else really in the country. So, and then obviously we're right on the coast, so we got the ocean and everything too. So it's pretty cool.
Well, and for people that have never been there before or may think of, I'm thinking about maybe a getaway to like the Brookings south coast of Oregon, there's got to be plenty of like things to do. Obviously water related, but also I'm sure some other fun activities.
There's lots of along the coast. There's lots of what do you call it? Like it's a touristy thing.
Sure.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of stops you can make depending on what you want to do. But I mean, I don't know. They got you come out here and you can see things that you don't really see anywhere else. So
well, because the redwoods, they're not that far, right? They're less than 20 miles.
Yeah, so actually the redwoods, now that you say that, so we're 3 miles from the California border, and then it's about 10 miles to our cutoff where we go to Southern Oregon Speedway, and that road where we hit the cutoff is actually where the redwoods start. So we actually drive through the redwoods every single time we go through there. So, and that's a very, very sought after area for tourists to go see also for sure.
Well, and they're really, I've seen them once. I went that way. I went from Redding to, I think, McKinleyville, where 299 comes out, and then up. And I remember seeing them for the first time, and like, it's indescribable. And I live in Oregon too, where there's trees galore. It's like, holy cow, where am I?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, talk about some of the biggest trees you'll ever see. I mean, they are massive. So, it's just, and then of course, we've had, that's, Star Wars, was filmed, part of it, like that was kind of filmed off of that area too. So, there's some cool historic, things about it for sure.
Yeah. Battle of Endor, Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I found this out last Winter Nationals. As parts of Return of the Jedi was filmed off of those huge dunes off of I-8, just across the Arizona border in California. All those huge dune formations where people are doing all those wild and crazy stuff.
Oh, I didn't even know about that one. So.
Yeah, there's a connection there. So.
Yeah.
Well, people that you want to thank, sponsors you want to thank. I know that you've got a great core of people that make sure, because there's got to be times where it's hard. It's hard to travel from where you live to these races, and even if you're doing good, let alone if you're doing bad, it makes it a little bit harder. But to make it all happen is simply impressive, and I'm sure there's lots of people you want to thank.
Of course, big time, my mom and dad for sure. They're the biggest part of it. And then my wife and my kid, obviously, my kid being my biggest fan, I would say. And then, all of our sponsors that help us out that, basically keep us going. Harness and Race Engines for sure. Without him, with motors, we would be lost other than having a crate motor. But us being the open motor side, he basically keeps us going anytime we need anything. So Arneson Race Engines, big time, in motion graphics, top gear transmission, Brookings glass, Les Schwab tires, Darren Farmer. I mean, there's a whole lot of them, but that's the main bulk of them right there. So, just everybody, yeah, it definitely takes a team and a whole lot of people to keep us going, and just consistently on the road traveling, and you know, it's time consuming too. So, thanks to everybody that helps us out.
One thing before I let you go, I forgot to ask, folks that want to support your team, do you have in the works or currently right now any sort of an apparel run of shirts or hoodies that folks can kind of help contribute that way?
Not right this second. No, we haven't gotten. So we're kind of lackadaisical about that. We had, you know, our shirts and hoodies and stuff that we had at the track in the trailer before last year when we had our trailer fire. And we just haven't gotten back into that yet. So, not right at this moment. No, we don't have anything going on with apparel. So,
okay.
But if we do, then we'll have to post an update about it whenever we do get into that. So,
for sure. And feel free to, I mean, a trailer fire, that's generally detrimental. That puts a team out like indefinitely, forever. But it's great that hasn't been the case for you and your brothers.
Yeah, we got pretty lucky on that one. Last year after that Freedom Cup, on the way back home, our first stacker trailer, you know, basically the whole front of it burned up. So, luckily for insurance, we were able to get another one. So, you know, if it wasn't for that, it would definitely be a big hit. So,
sure. Well,
yep.
I appreciate you coming on, Matt, and I'm looking forward to see what the future holds for you, and we'll definitely be running into each other.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Well, race fans, that does it for this interview. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that you continue to enjoy these upcoming interviews. We appreciate it if you would like and subscribe wherever you're listening, whether it's on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever it's at. Give us a like and give us a subscription so that we can deliver more of these great interviews to you for your listening pleasure. In the meantime, wherever we're at, wherever you're listening, we hope you have a great rest of your day and a pleasant evening, and we will see you soon here at Highside Racing Promotions.